Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Saturday, August the 26th, 2023. Donald Trump has been arrested in Atlanta, Georgia, on charges relating to the 2020 election in that state. You know, there's the allegation that he illegally tried to change the results. And we do have a time for his arrest and for his increasingly famous mugshot. And so I will be looking at the horoscope for his arrest, and I will be sort of fitting it in to what is going on in his life at the moment. You know, I do look at Donald Trump's life and chart periodically, and so I'm going to do it again. I think it's the right thing to do because, you know, this is a big event, a US president being arrested. Maybe it's not just a big event for Trump, it may be a big event for the United States. You know, that kind of doesn't look good for America, does it? Its president or former president being arrested. I also want to look at the horoscope of another challenger for the Republican nomination, and then that is Vivek Ramaswamy. He's been getting a lot of coverage recently, so I thought I'd have a quick look at his horoscope. I mean, it's difficult to say very much from it because I don't have a time of birth at the moment. Anyway, before I do all that, I want to look at the astrology for today, which is Saturday, August the 26th, 2023. So there is Donald, top right, glaring at us, looking, I'm not sure about that picture, how staged it is. He's trying to look angry, I suppose. And mean. Not sure how that photo is going to go down, but I think we're going to be seeing a lot of that photo over the next year or two. So anyway, let's look at today's astrology. You know, I think it's actually quite a good day. You know, the moon is now in Capricorn, or rather it's moving into Capricorn, but that kind of depends where you are. So the moon moves into Capricorn at 2:05 in the afternoon in London. So if you're in Western Europe, moon is in Capricorn sort of afternoon and the evening. If you're in Asia, it won't be until the evening that the moon is in Capricorn, and really if you're in Australia, New Zealand, it's really not going to be in Capricorn at all. So that's not going to be an issue for you. Maybe very end of the day in Australasia, but I'm not sure. I haven't done maybe not even that. If you're in the Americas, though, it goes into Capricorn at 9:05 in the morning in New York, 6:05 in the morning in Los Angeles. So pretty much all of the day the moon is in Capricorn. Now that does mean that what the day is like kind of depends where you are. So there are two lunar aspects to consider. There's moon square Mars, which is quite an aggressive sort of hostile aspect. You can see the moon, there's the moon, and where's Mars gone? Mars is here. So the moon would square Mars just before it went into Capricorn. And then the moon moves on to make a trine to the sun. So if you're in Europe, Asia, Australia, New Zealand, I think it's going to be more of a moon square Mars day. Bit of aggression there, bit of tension, with Moon Mars aspects. One symbolism of the Moon Mars square. Moon is a female planet. Guido Bonatus, the medieval astrologer, he said about Moon Mars contacts. He said something like, "The moon is the woman is always right, I warrant," or something like that. Of course, he was looking at it from a very male-orientated view of the world, it being the Middle Ages, but he was kind of saying, don't argue with women. Or I suppose you could work it, you could look at it both ways. I suppose if you're a woman, then don't argue with you, because you're able to give as good as you get. So that's the Moon Mars aspect, which I think is going to be stronger if you're Europe, Asia, Australasia. If you're in the Americas, I don't think that's going to be such an issue. I think it's going to be more of a Moon trine Sun day, so that's quite harmonious. So all things being equal, probably a better day if you're in the Americas, in the New World, than if you're in the Old World. But still, Moon is going into Capricorn. It is moving into Capricorn. We are getting that transition. So it is a big change. Moon moving from Sagittarius to Capricorn. Sagittarius is all about movement, free flow, doing kind of what we want, but being in a position where we have quite a strong view on what's going on, and not being afraid to talk about it. But then Capricorn is a more sensible energy, so things maybe calm down a bit. It's also more selfish energy. Moon in Capricorn, all things being equal, is not a great placement for the moon, because the moon rules Cancer, so it's in its detriment in Capricorn. So moon in Capricorn can be a bit sort of mean, selfish, focusing on one's own interests, but sometimes one has to be selfish. So I don't think we should necessarily see selfishness as something terrible. We all kind of have to look after ourselves, and maybe charity in many cases does begin at home. As far as other things going on, there are some useful midpoints. If you look at the Sun, it is on the Mercury-Venus midpoint. You can see that by eye. It's also aspecting the Mercury-Jupiter midpoint by semi-square. That is good. Sun on the Mercury-Venus midpoint is very talented. The Mercury-Venus pair is about artistic talent. It's about business talent. So, if there's something you can do where you can show off your artistic ability, or even your business ability, if you're an artist, you shouldn't sort of waste the day. Do something creative. Even if you're not an artist, do something creative with that Mercury-Venus. And, Mercury-Jupiter, Sun on a Mercury-Jupiter midpoint, it's quite optimistic. Try to be optimistic. Okay, certainly if you're in the Americas, you've got Moon in Capricorn, can make you sort of, quite sensible, focusing perhaps on the negative as well as the positive. But, try with that Mercury hitting the Mercury-Jupiter midpoint to be positive, to think about the very best, and that is relevant to the way we communicate. We need to communicate in a positive, uplifting way, and don't be shy about your creative and artistic abilities. You've got to talk about them. Tell people what you're planning. Okay, don't give away secrets, but tell people what you're creating. Get some feedback, because I think that could be a very useful exercise. As far as relationships are concerned, Mars is Mars. There's Mars. It's square the Venus Jupiter midpoint. Now, with a square, there's a Venus Jupiter midpoint around here. So there's Mars square the Venus Jupiter midpoint. I know you hear the word square, and that seems like a difficult aspect, but it is an aspect. It's a dynamic aspect. So if Mars is square the Venus Jupiter midpoint, that means that relationships can prosper if they're handled in the right way. It's about generosity. Generosity can really work today with that midpoint, and people want a bit of excitement. If you and someone else can find something exciting to do, then that relationship can really prosper. Though going back to what I was saying about Mercury Mars being about Mercury Venus being Sun on a Mercury Venus midpoint being about business, that Mars on the Venus Jupiter midpoint, aside from relationships, can be quite lucky, because Venus and Jupiter, Venus is a lesser benefic, Jupiter is the greater benefic. So with Mars on the Venus Jupiter midpoint squaring the Venus Jupiter midpoint, that suggests successful and fortunate activity, and that could relate to business. And while all this is going on, Jupiter is opposition the Sun Pluto midpoint. Now, not everyone is going to feel this, but if you're a sort of a very motivated kind of person, I think you will. So let me just show you. Here's Pluto. There's the Sun, and so they're in Earth signs. Sun at the beginning of Virgo, Pluto at the end of Capricorn, and there's Jupiter on the Sun-Pluto midpoint. Now, Sun-Pluto is the principle of being quite obsessed, an obsessive belief in oneself, believing in personal transformation. It's not enough to just stay still. You've got to sort of transform yourself and create something. And then Jupiter is a planet of it's a positive, optimistic energy, and it wants to make the most of everything. So Jupiter on the Sun-Pluto midpoint is about really pushing oneself and one's agenda, not stopping, not being satisfied with second best. And I know it's a Saturday, a lot of people, it's day off, but if you have a chance to make the most of that Jupiter on the Sun-Pluto midpoint, I think you can really do something amazing with that. And it ties in. I said that the Sun on the Mercury-Venus midpoint can be connected with business, perhaps career activities, professional activities, if you're in the right position. But it's showing your cleverness. That's what it's about. And then you throw in Jupiter opposition to Sun-Pluto midpoint. That can show some that can show an enormous amount of power, but it's not going to last forever. So if you have got business plans, if you feel there's something to do of a business perspective today, Saturday, then you should do it, because these things are not going to last forever. That aspect between Jupiter opposition and the Sun-Pluto midpoint, Sun conjunct the Mercury-Venus midpoint, they're going to break up very soon, very quickly. They would have, I think, broken up by tomorrow. So try to take advantage of that. So now let's move on to my forecast for the 12 signs. These are my forecasts for the 12 signs for Saturday, August the 26th, 2023. Aries, the seasons are starting to change. You can smell it in the air. And you're now worried that time is slipping by. You therefore want to move things up a gear and start pushing yourself and your agenda. Other people might not be on the same wavelength as you, but you don't have to be a team player to succeed. Taurus, you know that your ambitions can't be realized if you have a limited horizon. You have to expand your operations and perhaps do some travelling, but it is a serious process where you slowly expand your scope and reach, and then all of a sudden it comes together. Things that are foreign bring luck. Gemini, you can see opportunities moving in and out of view, and you might feel a certain frustration that you're unable to take advantage of them. But it's a time for reflection, for considering what is possible in the real world. And by silently gaining the knowledge about what is possible and what is not, you create the framework for future advances. Cancer. The moon is changing sign from Sagittarius to Capricorn. Your focus changes from the material to the social details. You recognise that there are certain people who you do need to get close to, and your serious, organised approach can bring romantic and interpersonal satisfaction. But if something only benefits you, it's probably not worth having. Leo. A good day, provided you use the prevailing energies in the right way. It's not a time for extravagant displays. Rather, what you need to do is work away on what is important. That way, you'll start to feel a growing sense of selfhood and a feeling that you're doing the right thing for yourself and for the people around you. Virgo. The moon is moving into Capricorn, where it makes an 120-degree aspect to the sun in Virgo. You've got a lot of energy at your disposal, and at the same time, you'll be very grounded. You can work through things of a financial and business nature, and as others enjoy the weekend, you can move into top gear. Libra, you understand that right now your life needs a little more grounding, that what happens in the public eye isn't the only thing that matters. So, by focusing on security issues, you can do yourself a major favour. And at the same time, you'll be at your most successful when you're doing things that are hardly noticed by the rest of the world. Scorpio. You feel as if you're at a crossroads, as if one way of being is about to come to an end, and another way of being is about to start. And this may have something to do with the people around you, especially if you haven't known them for very long. Not everyone is worth knowing, and in certain cases it may be time to say thank you and goodbye. Sagittarius. You have a chance to create a stable and well-rounded public image for yourself as someone who knows what they're doing, who won't do anything crazy. And as a result, you can gain people's trust. You just have to curb some of your wilder impulses and concentrate just a little bit on your prospects for the future. Capricorn. The moon is moving into your star sign. As a result, your behaviour and reaction to the world is going to be more understandable to other people. And in most cases, you won't have to explain yourself. But you also have an opportunity to do things differently, to put energy into areas of your life that you tend to ignore. Aquarius. For many Aquarians, it's a time to leave the radar screens, at least over the weekend. You don't need to be seen or heard, and you're going to be most effective and probably happiest when you're on your own, or at least sticking to the company of close friends and close family. A good day for a good day for uncovering long-lost information. Pisces. For most Pisceans, it should be a pleasant day when you can fully engage with the world around you and take advantage of its many different opportunities. Indeed, it seems that something that is offered for free can make a big difference to your life. It's time to get to know some selected people better, to move beyond casual greetings and name tags. So what I'm going to do now, as always, is look at the I Ching. And what I did, of course, is I threw 3 coins in the air and I asked the question, what is Saturday going to be like for visitors to my YouTube channel? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 51, the arousing. By arousing, the I Ching is talking about some kind of shock. Not necessarily a bad shock, but just something happens which you really weren't expecting. And there are some moving lines. So the second line moves and the fifth line moves. So with the second line moving, the I Ching talks about losing something. But losing something which belongs to it. It belongs to us in such a way that we really can't lose it. So we might think we've lost something or lost an opportunity, and we might be tempted to, chase after it. We get it back, but it's really saying it's ours. We don't need to worry about it. It may be, because it's the beginning of a weekend. Often, beginning of a weekend, one gets news, perhaps by post or something. We get something that sort of upsets us, and but we want to do something about it. But it's a weekend, and we can't do anything about it because everything's closed. And then we think, oh no, how are we going to? It seems to be bad. Maybe maybe it's financially, or you're worried, will I get that money back? Should I, or something like that? Some concern that you've lost something. So you have to wait, and it's really annoying having to wait. So I think in many cases, if you're feeling like that, don't worry, because it does belong to you anyway. So there's no need to chase it. Just relax. You'll get it back. Now, of course, I'm not suggesting that you be completely complacent. So if you've left a ton of money on the street, I'm not saying, oh, wait a week or something and then it'll still be there. No, obviously not. I'm not suggesting that. But if you do feel that something's gone and it's a bit of a shock, and there's nothing you can kind of do in the short term, then just relax, because I think in most cases you will get it back. Because if it's yours, if it really is fundamentally yours, it will come back. Then we get into a situation where there's more. I don't know. There's more shocks coming, because the arousing is about shocks. I know that sounds bad, talking about shocks, but remember, this is a one-day reading. So, I mean, statistically, every couple of months, if I do this every day, you're going to get this. You're going to get this hexagram coming up. So it's not. We're not talking about mega shocks, but we're talking about things where you'd plan to do things and it's just not really working out in that sort of stable kind of way that you were expecting. And this hexagram here, this line here, the fifth line, is talking about repeated shocks, several shocks at once maybe, but it's not a big deal. We're not dealing with anything that we can't cope with, and it's saying by I Ching tells us that if we stay in the center of the action, like the center of a wheel, the center of a wheel is where there's no change. If we stay at the center of the action, we're not going to be affected by it, and it's water off a duck's back. So although it sounds a bit dramatic, this hexagram isn't so bad because of the lines. So those two, some of these lines are more difficult than others, but the two moving lines on this are fine. First moving line is about perhaps losing something but getting it back. The fifth line moving is simply about, yeah, sure, there are a couple of shocks, but they're not going to affect us personally because we just have to stay in the center of things and it will be fine. And this hexagram, it moves to hexagram number 58, which is a pretty good hexagram. It's hexagram number 58. This hexagram is the joyous. The symbolism here is two lakes, one over the other. So the lake is something full of water, it's emotion, it's about being happy, it's about being with other people. It's indicating, it's Saturday, it's a good day to go to a party or to do something fun with people. So you perhaps overall the beginning of the day might be a bit dramatic, things just disturbing us, not being able to concentrate, wondering whether we're going to be able to deal with everything. Then towards the end of the day, we can be more relaxed. We can meet up with people. We can meet up with friends, and so I think the day should end on quite a happy note. So let's now move back to the astrology, and I want to look at the chart for. Donald Trump's arrest. Here it is. This was in Atlanta, Georgia. Fox 5 Atlanta gave 7:48 p.m. local time, so that's the time I took on August the 24th. So what stands out about this chart? First of all, without reference to Trump's chart, well, the moon is on the midheaven. You've got moon in Sagittarius on the midheaven. The moon on the midheaven is, it's about the public. It's an incredibly public event. Everyone can see it. And of course, you've got the moon in Sagittarius. Donald Trump, he is a Gemini, but he has the moon in Sagittarius, and to an extent, that moon in Sagittarius describes Trump. So I think it's that moon in Sagittarius. I would have said it dominates the chart. Now, as far as where it's going to go, Mercury is retrograde. So this happening when Mercury is retrograde, Mercury retrograde slows things down. So maybe Donald, by walking into the jail, what is it, Fulton County Jail or wherever, when Mercury is retrograde, that kind of slows the thing down. Remember, this is not the start of a business venture. This is something Trump doesn't want to get involved in. This is not the start of something, normally when you choose a time to do something, it's when you want to start a business, when you want to do something positive. But what about choosing a time for something where you just want nothing to happen, where you want it to be dragged out, where you want it to be complicated, where you want the other side to have lots of grief? Yeah, then maybe you'd want Mercury to be retrograde. So maybe that's right. So as far as the moon in Sagittarius, where is the moon's next aspect? Moon in Sagittarius, its next aspect is a trine to Venus. So remember, this is a time when this is when that mugshot you can see on the top right, that's when it was born. It's not just the birth of Donald's arrest, but it's the birth of that photo. So if you're having a photo taken, so I suppose, yeah, I just said that it's kind of a negative event, but I suppose you have to look, Trump is just, everything is all about publicity, isn't it? That was a publicity shot. You know, people like Trump, photos, that's really important. He must have thought very hard about that photo. Maybe he practiced it, I don't know. And he had a time when he took that photo when the moon was trine Venus. I know Venus is retrograde, but it's Venus in Leo, Venus proud. Probably Trump thinks he looks good. You know, Donald is not. Trump is not really a modest person, is he? But I think that moon trine Venus, it's a good time to get your photo taken. And I would guess that photo is probably going to work in his favor. I mean, I don't understand what the Democrats are doing. I mean, surely, if you want to get rid of Trump, you just ignore him, don't you? I mean, he thrives on publicity, good publicity, bad publicity. It doesn't matter. It's all good publicity. It all works in his favor. And this just makes him relevant. I don't know. It seems a bit crazy to me. But that's the arrest chart. So how does it occur to Trump? What I'm going to do is I'm going to put Trump's chart and the arrest chart within each other. I hope you can see that. So, thing about Trump is he was born on a full moon. Sun in Gemini, moon in Sagittarius. There you can see. Just before a full moon, there's his sun in Gemini, and there's his moon in Sagittarius. So the question is, how is that full moon being affected? Now, so you will see that at the time of the arrest, Mercury was, I think, at 2147 Virgo. So, in other words, he had Mercury exactly on his full moon. Mercury was square his sun, square his moon. So how does that work out? Well, I think there are actually two ways of looking at that Mercury transit. Now, I should say, normally Mercury is a fast-moving planet. I know it's slower than usual because it's retrograde, but we don't normally obsess about Mercury transits. But because this is a big event for him, I think we do have to, and it is slow because it's just turned retrograde. So one way of looking at it is saying Mercury is square his sun, Mercury is square his moon. Square is a difficult aspect, square is an irritating aspect. So if you've got Mercury square the moon, you just feel annoyed. You're a bit impulsive. You're going to say things which Mercury square your moon. You're just going to say things which are perhaps not very nice. Just show your annoyance. Likewise, Mercury square the sun. It's all a big annoyance for Trump. That picture is maybe just showing it. He's just annoyed. Why is he here? So I think there is a fundamental annoyance there. But you also could say that Mercury is on his sun-moon midpoint. So Mercury on a sun-moon midpoint. So let me just read what, for example, Reinhold Ebertin says about Mercury on a sun-moon midpoint. To give you an idea, Mercury on a sun-moon midpoint, he just says, Mercury on a sun-moon midpoint, one's attitudes and thoughts in relation to the male and female principles, union of thoughts between husband and wife, an association between young people, the contemplation of marriage. That's kind of on the surface doesn't really seem to fit. But I think we have to use it on a symbolic way. For Trump, for Trump, that full moon, the sun is the male principle, the moon is the female principle. How does he, the passive and the active, the Mercury is on that. It's about communicating that tension within himself. And he is able to communicate. Sun Moon is fundamentally who we are. It's about the balance between positive and negative, masculine and feminine, and Mercury communicates. So he was able to communicate at many different levels, and I think he may have been able to use that quite powerfully at the time of his arrest. So that's one aspect of it. So we also see that, this is a longer term trend. This is it's not really happening just today, but Uranus is at 23 degrees 4 minutes Taurus, so it's just short of his midheaven. So he has at the moment Uranus transiting his midheaven. Uranus is a planet of surprise, shocks, revolution. It's certainly something that grabs everyone's attention. It's on his midheaven. Of course, with Uranus on his midheaven, he's being accused, kind of being a revolutionary, of trying to overthrow the elected government. That's what people are accusing him of. And so it's not surprising, perhaps, that he's got Uranus on his midheaven. And it's also not surprising, with Uranus on his midheaven, that he just is not going away from the public eye, all thanks to the Democrats, who, in their sort of desperation to destroy him, are keeping him relevant. So that is an important theme about what's happening right now. So that's it. Oh, Saturn. So Trump has got his Saturn at 23 Cancer, 2349 Cancer, and the Moon at the time of the arrest. The Moon was exactly sesquiquadrate. That's 100. That's an 135 degree aspect. So that's 3/8 of the circle. Imagine you've got 8 slices of cake. That's like 3 of those slices. So 3 times 45 is 135. So the Moon is hitting at Saturn. So emotionally, I think it's a bit difficult for him. Obviously. Being arrested, is an emotionally difficult time. He feels sort of blocked. He feels out of control. He is not in control. He's in a prison. He's having to negotiate for his freedom. He's having to post bail. So it's kind of not surprising that the Moon is sesquiquadrate his Saturn. Another thing going on is that the Sun is crossing his ascendant. Now, Trump's ascendant, if we take his time of birth, 10:54 a.m., we get an ascendant of 29 degrees 58 minutes Leo. Now, if he had been born like a few seconds later, the ascendant would have moved from Leo to Virgo. So it's really close. He may well have Virgo rising. To my mind, the way he looks as if he's got Leo rising. That's what I think, but maybe we may be wrong on this. So it's possible he has Virgo rising. So the Sun has just crossed his ascendant. So when you have a planet crossing the ascendant, it kind of can mark a sort of a new beginning. You want to launch yourself onto the public stage. You want to get attention. The Sun has just spent a month in his 12th house, which is a kind of inferior low profile sector of his chart. And then it bursts out into the first house. So again, I think that works in his favor. This arrest happening as the sun moves into across his ascendant, that pushes him. It does help push him into the limelight. This is his time, to take action. So, overall, looking at the arrest chart, and of course, this is the chart of that photograph. Yes, a photograph can have a horoscope. And so the sun, beginning of Virgo, that's what this photograph is all about. It's about Trump starting a new phase in his life. Sun just crossing his ascendant. So that's one way of looking at it. I also want to look at his secondary progressions. So remember, secondary progressions. Trump has just turned 77. So we're looking at the 77th day after he was born. I mean, I have looked at this chart, the secondaries before. So he was born on June the 14th, 1946. These are the positions of the planets for August the 30th, 1946, which is approximately 77 days after he was born. Now, what is really interesting is, you can see you've got a load of planets in Libra, progressed planets in Libra. And so on the 30th of August 1946, there was Venus at 2249 Libra. There was Moon at 2442 Libra. There's Jupiter at 2506 Libra. So the Moon is coming to a conjunction with his Jupiter. Moon conjunct Jupiter is really very fortunate. And this is happening at a time when he's just been arrested. Being arrested is not supposed to be a fortunate thing. So again, I think this is further evidence that this arrest is, I think, more of a plus than a minus in Trump's life because of that Moon conjunct Moon conjunct Jupiter. It is incredibly fortunate. Now you might say, okay, the Moon will pass that conjunction with Jupiter. Sooner or later, the Moon is going to progress. Moon will move into Scorpio. That is true, and the Moon doesn't really work very well in Scorpio. But I'm talking about like right now, next few months. I think that Moon Jupiter conjunction, Moon Jupiter conjunction is fortunate. Okay, I mean, I'm not saying that the whole thing is fortunate. This progressed chart, progressed ascendant. Now there are different ways of progressing the ascendant during secondary progressions. It's the ascendant in secondary progressions is it's a bit arbitrary. It's one of these things where if you want to get into the details, you have to work out the progressed midheaven, and then you use a table of houses to read off the progressed ascendant. And can you really do that for a progression? Maybe not. I don't know. But if you use the table of houses approach, progressed ascendant is at 2 degrees 7 Scorpio, so it's moving towards his progressed Saturn. Now, that might suggest problems later on. It's 2-7, it's going to be exact, I suppose, next year. So, I'm not saying that this suggests that, that Moon Jupiter, that progressed Moon moves very quickly. It's not saying anything about next year, but just right now, the next few months, and certainly this month, next month, I would have said that is pretty fortunate. Another thing about this Moon-Jupiter conjunction is that it is actually echoed in his solar return. So if we look at Trump's solar return for 2023, we can see that there's also a Moon-Jupiter. There's a Moon-Jupiter conjunction. This is when the Sun returned to the place it was when when he was born, June the 14th, and his last birthday. And you can see there's a Moon-Jupiter conjunction, which, as it's echoed with the secondary progressions, further supports the argument that it's a fortunate event. Having said that, the solar return does have some warnings for Trump. Neptune is rising, and Neptune is square the midheaven. Neptune is capable of making some bad mistakes. And the Sun, you can see his Sun at 22 Gemini is moving towards a square with Neptune. So in a solar return, because the solar return is a very Sun-based chart, so we really need to look at the Sun. And the Sun is moving to that conjunction with the IC, the lowest point in the chart, where it makes that square with Neptune. So yeah, I'm saying that things right now may be okay for him, but towards the end of the year, beginning of next, I do think he has to be careful. He's capable of making some, I think, some big mistakes which will be kind of his own doing. Let's see what he does. But I think, if anyone wants him to be the next president, he needs to be carefully managed. Maybe not now, but in a few months' time. Yes, with that Neptune is, I think, worrying. That's his solar return. I just wanted to quickly look at his Vedic chart. It's not that the Vedic chart, tells us anything we don't know, but just a reminder with Trump's Vedic chart that, again, assuming his time of birth is correct, theoretically on the 14th of November 2016, he moved into his Jupiter Dasha, which lasted until November the 14th, 2032. And obviously, November the 14th, 2016 was just after he'd become elected president. And he stays in this period for 16 years. So very often, at least in my experience in Vedic astrology, when someone enters a period and starts to set a pattern for that period, that pattern continues, regardless of, sometimes regardless of what the planet is actually like. But this is Jupiter. Trump's Jupiter is not too bad. His Jupiter rules his fifth house. And the fifth house in Indian astrology is very fortunate. So overall, I think this should be a good period for him. But as we now know, it sort of has ups and downs. And then we look at the sub periods of this. So at from July 2021 through to October 2023, he has been in his Mercury sub-period. So in his chart, Mercury is actually quite well placed, because I know he's got in his Western chart, he's got Mercury in Cancer, but in his Vedic chart, it goes back into Gemini, and of course Mercury rules Gemini. So this period from July 2021 to October 2023 is actually quite fortunate, because it's Jupiter main period, Mercury the sub-period. So this is a time where he really has, I think, been able to successfully project himself, and I think the legal problems have probably worked in his favour. I think someone said, didn't they, that his poll ratings in compared to DeSantis, as soon as the legal issues started, he started pulling ahead of DeSantis, the governor of Florida, for the Republican nomination. And I think this Mercury is really helping him. And you'll see that Mercury, from Jupiter, Mercury is in the 10th house. So if you, in other words, if you put Jupiter on the ascendant, you make that the first house, then Mercury is 10th house from Jupiter. So that that further strengthens the power of Mercury. But this Mercury subdasha does come to an end at the end of October, and he moves into the Ketu, the South Node subdasha. This Ketu, is the South Node. So, according to the Indian legend, there was this dragon that tried to steal the potion of immortality from the gods, and the dragon was cut in half. But of course, it didn't die because it had swallowed the potion of immortality. And the North Node, Rahu, at least it's got a head. Ketu doesn't have a head, and so he enters the Ketu. Ketu can be fortunate, but I think in October, from October onwards, this is right through until May 2027. Until this period from October 23 to September 2024, just before the election. Ketu, he might just behave in a way that is not sensible. I know he very often gets away with it, but I think he could be the source of his own undoing. And from October onwards, yes, if you're listening to this and you're a close confidant of Trump, that's when he really needs to be managed. So that's a few points about his Indian chart. And now I very quickly want to look at the horoscope of Vivek Ramaswamy. So he is, as far as I understand, he's obviously young. He's born in 1985. He's not even 40 yet. This is his chart. He is what do we know about him? He's a libertarian. He's worth nearly $1 billion. He is, and being a libertarian, he's not a big fan of green stuff. He's against whatever environmental, social, and governance, whatever ESG. He's really not into that at all. So this is a midday chart. He is a Leo. He clearly has what I would say. He probably has a high opinion of himself. But Leo is the best place for the sun. The sun rules Leo, and he's got his Leo planets are trine Uranus. He's not afraid of telling the world what he thinks. Him being born, mid-80s, Uranus was in Sagittarius, so he's kind of represents that mini generation. Uranus in Sagittarius does not want to be held back. For many people, it's a collective transpersonal planet. They don't really get to experience Uranus, but obviously for him, he does demonstrate it. Uranus, okay, let's talk about Chiron a little. He's got Uranus opposition Chiron. What would that be about? Now, again, most people are not really going to feel Uranus opposition Chiron, but there was his Uranus opposition Chiron when he was born. And as he is as he's been so successful, as he's becoming an important player, I think that Uranus opposition Chiron may be starting to activate, and so it may be, about a generation. Uranus in Sagittarius is all the stuff they want to do, and Chiron is that is that wound that's holding him back. Where is that wound? It's having to, Chiron in Gemini, having to deal with the facts. Sort of wounded, but I mean, if you were looking at that Chiron, if you were trying to criticize Vivek Ramaswamy from a sort of progressive perspective, then you might say, oh, here's someone who wants to do whatever he likes, Uranus in Sagittarius, but Chiron in Gemini are the facts, and he's in denial about the facts. He's kind of wounded by the facts, and hence his opposition to environmental, social, and governance, his opposition to ESG. So that might be how you see Uranus opposition Chiron. Of course, if you're a supporter of Vivek Ramaswamy, and for example, you don't believe in global warming, or I don't know what he thinks about global warming, but if you think ESG is a bad, then you might see Chiron in Gemini as being fake news, being damaged by false facts. So it depends how you want to see it. Up to you. But clearly, with Sun trine Uranus, he is able to really make things happen, and we don't know. One thing about him is we don't know what sign his moon is in. So at noon, his moon is at 2646 Taurus. So he probably, all things being equal, has his moon in Taurus. Now, by the way, he is a Hindu. I believe he's a practicing Hindu, although he is trying to appeal to the Christian right. So that's kind of quite interesting. But we will know his birth time. If that birth time is going to be available for sure. I'm sure I'd be very surprised if we don't soon find out. Maybe I didn't look hard enough. Maybe if I'd looked hard enough, I would have found it. But at the moment, we don't know we just don't know what sign his moon is in. And it's really important to know what sign his moon is in, because if he was born late in the day, he'd have moon in Gemini, and he'd have no planets except Neptune in Earth signs. So it does make a big difference to understand, if he's got no planets in Earth signs, like Trump has no except Neptune, if he's got no traditional planets in Earth signs, then that would colour how we evaluate his libertarian views, and in particular his rejection of ESG. But we don't know. So just bear that in mind. I mean, it is frustrating, and the moon is important, and we really would like to know what sign his moon is in. Finally, he's got Venus in Cancer. Venus in Cancer is a very traditional sign, and he is, he's pitching for traditional values. Venus in Cancer, sort of widely opposition Neptune, but it's his only planet in water, and it's that Venus in Cancer that makes him makes him traditional. Maybe even gives him a bit of sentimentality, but perhaps we don't see on the surface. So anyway, I'm sorry to have been so vague about Vivek Ramaswamy's horoscope, but I've only just started looking at it, and hopefully I'll be looking at it again, and hopefully I'll be looking at it again when I have a birth time. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say. For today, and I will talk to you tomorrow.